grandfather pushed onto an oncoming subway track in the Bronx.
The doctor's lawyer told the judge he's committed his life to caring for sick people. But it was here at this station where he's accused of trying to kill a man.
It was supposed to be an ordinary moment, a crowded platform, the sound of an approaching train, strangers standing inches apart, not talking, not looking at each other, just waiting. And then, without warning, one man stepped forward, and another man was suddenly fighting for his life. In the heart of New York City, at one of the busiest subway stations in the Bronx, a 72-year-old commuter was shoved toward a moving train, not during an argument, not after a confrontation, but in what police describe as a random act of violence. In seconds, everything changed. Passengers screamed, the train roared past, and a routine commute turned into a crime scene that shook the city. This was not a robbery. This was not personal. And according to investigators, the victim and the accused had never met before. Tonight, that raises an unsettling question. If this can happen here, in broad daylight, to a complete stranger, who is really safe? As police charge a 29-year-old man with attempted murder, New Yorkers are left confronting something deeper than one shocking incident: fear on public transport, rising random violence, and a growing sense that danger no longer announces itself. It simply arrives. This is not just the story of one attack. It's a warning about a system under pressure, a city on edge, and a moment that many say could have ended far worse. What exactly happened on that platform? Why are such attacks becoming more common? And what does this case reveal about safety, accountability, and life underground? Tonight, we break down the full timeline, the investigation, the unanswered questions, and the larger crisis this moment exposes. Just after the new year began, the platform at the 161st Street Yankee Stadium subway station in the Bronx looked exactly as it does every day. Commuters stood shoulder to shoulder. Some stared down the tunnel. Others checked their phones. A Manhattan-bound train was approaching, slowing as it entered the station. According to police, a 72-year-old man was standing near the platform edge, waiting quietly among other passengers. At that moment, a 29-year-old man, later identified as Anton Alishin, moved toward him. Investigators say there was no interaction between the two. No words were exchanged. No argument broke out. No visible warning signs appeared. Without notice, police allege that Alishin forcefully shoved the elderly man toward the moving train. As it pulled into the station, the impact knocked the victim into the side of the train, sending him crashing down onto the platform. Witnesses described a sudden eruption of chaos. People screamed. Some rushed forward. Others froze, unsure what they had just seen. The train continued past the platform as commuters and transit staff scrambled to help the injured man. Emergency responders were called immediately. The victim was found conscious but badly hurt, suffering from head injuries. He was transported to a nearby hospital for treatment. Authorities later confirmed that, despite the severity of the attack, the man survived and was listed in stable condition. Officers from the New York Police Department arrived within minutes. The suspect was detained at the scene, surrounded by witnesses and transit personnel. Police say he did not attempt to flee. Investigators quickly secured the station, reviewed surveillance footage, and began taking statements from those who had been on the platform at the time of the attack. Later that day, prosecutors announced that Anton Alishin had been formally charged with attempted murder, assault, and reckless endangerment. During his initial court appearance, Alishin pleaded not guilty to all charges. A judge ordered that he be held without bail, citing the seriousness of the alleged act and the potential danger to the public. From the beginning, police made one detail clear: the victim and the suspect did not know each other. There was no personal connection, no shared history, no dispute that escalated. Investigators described the incident as a random act of violence, a characterization that immediately intensified public concern. Because for millions of New Yorkers, the subway is not a destination, it's a daily necessity. And this attack unfolded not late at night, not in an empty station, but during a routine commute in a crowded public space. As investigators continue to analyze video evidence and interview witnesses, trains now pass through the station as they always have. But the memory of that moment, the sudden shove, the narrow escape, The randomness has not moved on so easily, and it leaves behind a question that cannot be ignored. If this happened without warning, in full view of others, what prevented it from ending in tragedy? For many New Yorkers, the attack at the 161st Street Yankee Stadium station did not come out of nowhere. It arrived into a city that has been quietly grappling with fear beneath its streets for years. According to repeated briefings and public crime updates released by the New York Police Department, violence in the subway system has followed a troubling pattern, not defined by organized crime or targeted attacks, but by sudden, unpredictable incidents involving strangers. What distinguishes these cases is not their frequency alone, but their nature. In many of them, there is no argument beforehand, no robbery attempt, no warning signs visible to other passengers. Victims are often chosen at random: commuters waiting for trains, elderly riders, or people standing alone near platform edges. Over the past several years, a number of subway attacks across New York City have shared the same characteristic: a brief moment of contact, a sudden shove, and irreversible consequences within seconds. In some cases, victims survived with serious injuries. In others, they did not. Each incident reignited public debate, prompted urgent press conferences, and led to renewed promises of reform. City officials announced increased uniform patrols. Transit authorities expanded surveillance coverage. Outreach programs were introduced to identify individuals in mental distress before violence occurred. Yet despite these measures, the underlying anxiety never fully receded, because for daily riders, safety in the subway is not measured by statistics alone. It is measured by instinct. Commuters learn habits over time, standing farther from the edge, avoiding empty platforms, watching the behavior of strangers more closely than ever before. Parents warn their children. Elderly riders travel with heightened caution, and moments that should feel routine, waiting, standing, riding, are quietly reevaluated. Experts in urban crime psychology have long noted that random public space violence carries a disproportionate psychological weight. Even when overall crime numbers rise or fall, incidents that appear senseless create a lasting impression. They linger in memory because they challenge a basic expectation that normal behavior leads to normal outcomes. A commuter who follows every rule can still become a victim. That reality reshapes how a city feels. And when attacks involve public transport, a system relied upon by millions, the impact extends far beyond the individuals directly involved. Each new case reopens old wounds. News reports resurface past incidents. Surveillance images replay familiar scenes, and public confidence is tested once again. This is why the Bronx subway attack did not remain confined to one station, one platform, or one borough. It connected instantly to a broader, unresolved story, one about public safety, social system under strain, and a transportation network carrying not just passengers but fear. And as this latest case moved through the courts, it did so against a backdrop of lingering questions that have followed the city for years. How many warnings have already been issued? How many close calls have already occurred? And how many more moments like this will it take before commuters feel truly protected? Because history shows that these incidents are rarely remembered as isolated acts. They are remembered as part of a pattern, one that forces a city to look inward and ask whether enough has been done, or whether the same cycle is simply repeating itself. By the time details of the Bronx subway attack became widely known, the incident had already moved beyond the station where it happened. It had entered homes, conversations, and the collective mindset of the city. Across New York City, commuters described the same feeling, not panic but unease, a subtle shift, a heightened awareness that something ordinary had suddenly revealed itself as fragile. On platforms throughout the city, people began adjusting their behavior in small but noticeable ways. Some stood several steps farther back from the edge. Others positioned themselves near walls or columns. Many kept a quiet distance from strangers, even during crowded rush hours. These were not dramatic reactions. They were instinctive ones. For elderly riders, the emotional impact was sharper. Community groups working with older New Yorkers reported renewed fears about independent travel. Some seniors postponed trips. Others asked family members to accompany them. even for short commutes they had made alone for years. What made this attack particularly unsettling was not only the age of the victim, but the lack of warning. There was no confrontation to avoid, no signal to recognize, no time to react. That sense of helplessness spread quickly. Parents spoke about reminding their children to stay alert near platforms. Caregivers worried about loved ones who relied on public transport daily. And for many families, conversations about safety resurfaced. Conversations they had hoped were no longer necessary. Transit workers felt the weight as well. Employees who operate and maintain the subway system described the emotional toll of witnessing or responding to traumatic incident. Underground. Many are present in the first moments after violence occurs before emergency responders arrive and must continue working in the same environment afterward. While trains continued to run and schedules remained unchanged, the psychological rhythm of the system shifted. Social media reflected that change almost immediately. Posts did not focus solely on this one case. Instead, they recalled other incidents, moments when riders had felt vulnerable, startled, or unsafe. Each memory layered on top of the next, reinforcing a broader sense of concern. The tone was not uniform. Some expressed anger, demanding accountability. Others expressed resignation, saying such incidents had become part of city life. Many simply expressed fear, quiet, measured, and deeply personal. What unified these reactions was recognition. Nearly everyone could imagine themselves on that platform, waiting, standing too close, trusting that nothing would happen. That familiarity is what transformed this incident from a single act of violence into a citywide moment of reflection. Urban sociologists often describe public transport systems as extensions of a city's shared trust, spaces where millions of strangers agree, implicitly, to coexist without conflict. When that trust is disrupted, even briefly, the effects ripple outward. In the days following the attack, that ripple was visible. Commuters watched each other more closely. Silence on platforms felt heavier. Routine moments carried an undercurrent of caution. And while many riders refused to let fear change their lives, the awareness lingered. Because once people begin to ask themselves whether a random moment could turn deadly, whether safety depends on luck rather than predictability, the sense of security that defines shared public space becomes harder to restore. The phrase repeated again and again, across neighborhoods and background, captured that feeling precisely. This could have been anyone, not as an expression of panic, but as an acknowledgement of vulnerability. And in a city built on movement, speed, and shared space, that acknowledgement carried lasting weight. As attention shifted from the platform to the broader implications of the case, experts across multiple fields began examining what incidents like this reveal about life in dense, shared spaces. Urban safety analysts often describe public transit systems as environments built on assumption, rather than enforcement. The assumption that millions of strangers can move side by side without conflict. In a city like New York City, that assumption underpins daily life. But when a single, sudden act disrupts it, the entire structure feels fragile. Former transit security officials note that subway systems are fundamentally reactive by design. Cameras record, patrols respond, emergency services intervene. These layers are effective after an incident begins, but far less effective in the seconds before it happens. That gap matters, because the most dangerous moments in random public space violence often last less than 10 seconds. There is no time for alarms, warnings, or intervention. By the time a threat is recognized, it may already be over. Criminologists studying spontaneous attacks emphasize that these incidents rarely follow traditional crime logic. There is often no target selection process that can be traced, no escalation phase, and no rational incentive like theft or retaliation. That unpredictability limits traditional prevention tools. Mental health professionals add caution to the discussion. While some attackers show signs of distress or instability, many do not. Engage with systems designed to help them before a crisis occurs. Outreach programs depend on visibility, voluntary participation, and sustained support, conditions that are difficult to guarantee in a city under constant pressure. At the same time, experts warn against simplistic narratives. attributing every random attack to mental illness risk, stigmatizing millions of people who pose no threat. Ignoring mental health gaps entirely overlooks a factor that frequently appears in post-incident reviews. The truth, analysts say, lies in complexity. Public transport systems sit at the intersection of human behavior, environmental stress, anonymity, and speed. Each element increases efficiency. Each element also introduces vulnerability. Law enforcement officials acknowledge these limits openly. Representatives from the New York Police Department have repeatedly stated that while visible patrols can deter certain crime, no amount of staffing can eliminate unpredictability across hundreds of stations operating nearly around the clock. Even advanced surveillance has constraints. Cameras can observe behavior, but they cannot interpret intent in real time. Algorithms can flag unusual movement patterns, but they cannot reliably distinguish between harmless eccentricity and imminent danger. Experts in urban design note that station architecture itself plays a role. Narrow platforms, fast-moving trains, and crowd compression increase risk during rare but critical moments. Yet, redesigning legacy infrastructure is slow, costly, and often disruptive. This leaves cities balancing competing priorities, keeping transit accessible, keeping it efficient, and trying to make it safer, all at the same time. Analysts caution that public expectations often outpace reality. After each high-profile incident, calls for absolute safety grow louder. But absolute safety, experts argue, is incompatible with open systems designed for mass movement. The question then becomes not whether risk can be eliminated, but how much uncertainty society is willing to tolerate. That question has no easy answer, because every added safeguard carries trade-offs, delays, restrictions, surveillance, cost, and loss of freedom. And every failure, no matter how rare, carries an emotional weight far greater than its statistical footprint. As this case continues through the courts, experts stress that its significance lies not only in the actions of one individual, but in what it exposes about modern urban life, a reality where millions depend on shared systems that function smoothly almost all the time, yet remain vulnerable in unpredictable ways. That tension between trust and risk is not new, but each incident brings it back into focus, and each one forces cities, officials, and commuters to confront the same uncomfortable truth, that even the most advanced systems cannot fully protect against moments that unfold without warning. As the immediate intensity surrounding the Bronx subway attack slowly recedes, the case itself enters a phase that is far less visible to the public, but no less consequential. The legal process begins to take shape. Prosecutors will continue assembling evidence, surveillance footage captured from multiple angles, witness accounts recorded in the chaotic aftermath, and forensic timelines reconstructing the exact sequence of events on the platform. Each detail, no matter how small, becomes part of a larger picture that the court will eventually examine. Officials from the New York Police Department have stressed that the accused will move through the justice system according to established procedures, arraignments, hearings, and, eventually, trial proceedings that unfold over time rather than in headlines. But while the case progresses methodically, the public conversation moves differently. It fragments. Some focus on accountability, others focus on prevention. Many focus on fear, not loudly but persistently, because for commuters, the uncertainty does not wait for a verdict. Every platform becomes a reminder. Every approaching train carries a memory of how quickly circumstances can change. Every shared space raises a silent question. What if this moment turns unpredictable? That is why incidents like this extend beyond the courtroom. They challenge assumptions about control and predictability in daily life. They force people to confront the reality that safety in shared systems often depends not on individual action, but on collective trust. Trust that others will follow unspoken rules of coexistence. When that trust is broken, even once, it leaves a mark. City officials face a familiar dilemma. Calls for action grow louder after every high-profile incident. Demands for reassurance follow quickly, yet meaningful change in large, Aging systems rarely comes fast. Infrastructure cannot be redesigned overnight. Social issues cannot be resolved by decree. And so the space between expectation and reality widens. Experts caution that public frustration often stems from this gap. Desire for certainty in environments that cannot fully provide it. For families of commuters, the questions become personal. How do you explain risk without creating fear? How do you encourage awareness without fostering anxiety? And how do you reconcile the need to move forward with the instinct to protect? These are not questions with clear answers. They surface in conversations between parents and children, between caregivers and elderly relatives, between friends sharing stories of close calls and uneasy moments underground. What makes this case particularly haunting is not only what happened, but how narrowly it avoided becoming something far worse. A shift in timing, a step closer, a fraction of a second. The difference between survival and tragedy, those margins are what linger in the collective imagination. As days pass, headlines will fade, new stories will take their place. The station will return to its routines. Trains will arrive and depart as scheduled, but memory does not operate on a timetable. People remember events that disrupt their sense of safety, especially when those events occur in spaces meant to be ordinary, reliable, and shared. This is why the true impact of cases like this often becomes clear only over time, not in statistics, not in press conferences, but in subtle shifts in behavior, perception, and trust. As this case continues through the courts, it will eventually reach a formal conclusion, a legal outcome, a sentence or ruling, an end point defined by law. Yet the broader questions it raised will remain unresolved. They will resurface in future debates about public safety. They will influence how cities think about shared spaces, and they will echo each time another incident tests the fragile balance between openness and security. Because at its core, this story is not just about one moment on a subway platform. It is about the realities of living in close proximity to millions of strangers, about the systems that allow modern cities to function, and about the quiet understanding that, despite every precaution, uncertainty remains part of the landscape. Stories like this matter not because they shock, but because they reflect something deeper about how we live together. They remind us that safety is not just a policy question or a legal outcome or a headline. It is a shared responsibility shaped by awareness, empathy, and engagement. Stay informed. Stay attentive to your surroundings, and stay connected to the conversations that shape the spaces we all depend on, because understanding these moments is not about fear. It is about recognizing reality and deciding how to move forward within it.